welcome back, YouTubers, to my channel of an everyday life of an Aspie. If you're new to my channel and you've just landed on my channel, I welcome you all on AspieAnswersAll. I'm all about talking about the mental health series. This is my life story with OCD, suspicious syndrome, and the like, and also being a support person, advocate for people without a voice that hasn't, shared their stories, or just wants someone to just spread some light about what's going on in their life. Maybe, hopefully, I can challenge them later on nicely to hopefully get them to come on board to spread this awareness of what life is like with them, regardless of what their mental illness is, or similar conditions with similar, outlining, symptoms or signs of what they may be going through. But then again, it's all up to them, like anybody else in this day and age. I'm here all about removing the stereotyping and, many people's thinking about what mental illness is all about versus, what suspicious syndrome is all about, so that hopefully that you guys can understand better as a person of me, instead of basically, just someone that is with these, diagnoses. And all further ado, guys, at the moment I'm talking about the auditory processing disorders right now, and at the last one I was talking about the diagnoses, basically how it's being diagnosed, even though as being clinically proven after research that sometimes it's hard to actually diagnose the actual fault or the cause for the auditory processing disorders, along with other many disorders along the way. But then again, as time's going on, we should be able to have the right, resources and tools and materials and whatnot to actually evaluate and do our own research and it all. So not further ado, guys, this is part 5, I think, from memory right now, if I'm counting right, which is the causes of your auditory processing disorders. So hopefully with all the newbies, that you'll learn something, as well as the oldies. I welcome you back and thanking you for your support. So not further ado, guys, this is causes part 5. Let's begin. Acquired auditory processing disorder is pretty much caused by any damage to or dysfunction of the central auditory nervous system, and that can then lead to causing auditory processing problems, such as basically, your hearing, loss of hearing, or just how you differentiate different words, basically. Even though we know English can be a hard language to learn with all these same words but different spellings, there are many people around. Have they had their breakfast yet? As a classic example, as a bit. Basically, there are other many type causes, however, that is basically maybe caused for this auditory processing disorder to actually develop in kids or adults, and they are as listed. For the first one, with the brief overview, is the hereditary and genetic characteristics of the central auditory processing disorder, which I mean here is the ability to listen and to comprehend multiple messages at the same time as a trait. Is a trait that is heavily influenced by our genes, pretty much, obviously, from the research, federal researchers that has actually done their research on this. These short circuits in the wiring sometimes run in families or result from a difficult birth, pretty much, just like any learning disability would, obviously. And regardless of it all, auditory processing disorders can be associated with conditions affected by the genetic traits, such as various developmental disorders. Inheritance of auditory processing disorder refers to whether the condition is inherited from your mother or father, or even running in the family somehow. Central auditory processing disorder may be hereditary neurological disorders, traits from the mother or the father, however. So the mother or father may be carrying that gene. Okay, the developmental auditory processing disorder, to clarify here, is in the majority of cases of developmental APD, the cause again is unknown. An exception, though, is acquired epileptic aphasia or Landau-Kleffner's syndrome, where a child's development regresses with language comprehension severely affected. The child is often thought to be deaf, but normal peripheral hearing is found. In other cases, though, however, suspected or known causes of APD in children may include delay in the myelin maturation, ectop or misplaced cells, what ectopic means, in the auditory subcortical areas, or genetic predisposition. In family with autosomal dominant epilepsy, seizures which affected the left temporal lobe seem to cause problems with auditory processing. Another extended family with a high rate of APD genetic analysis showed a haplotype chromosome in 12 that fully co-segregated with language impairment. As we know, hearing begins in utero, but the central auditory system continues to develop for at least the first decade. There is considerable interest in the idea that disruption of hearing during a sensitive period may have long-term consequences for auditory development. One study showed thalamocortical connectivity in vitro was associated with a time-sensitive developmental window and required a specific cell adhesion molecule for brain plasticity to occur. This points to connectivity between the thalamus and cortex shortly after being able to hear in the vitro is at least one critical period for auditory processing. Another study showed that rats, obviously, for example, that they used in these studies reared in a single tone environment during critical periods of development and had permanently impaired auditory processing. In the 1980s and 1990s, however, there was considerable interest in the role of chronic otitis media, which is middle ear disease, or the classic name for it is glue ear, in causing auditory processing disorders and related language and literacy problems. Otitis media with the fusion is a very common childhood disease. This causes a fluctuating conjunctive hearing loss, and there was concern that this may disrupt some auditory development if it occurred during a sensitive period. However, this kind of study will suffer from sampling bias because children with otitis media will be more likely to be referred to hospital departments if they are experiencing developmental difficulties. So basically that ends the one of the causes, basically, or the diagnosis of it. I think I was saying, yeah, the causes of the auditory processing disorder. Give me the like for thumbs up for support, basically showing that you're engaged and you're liking my content. Comment below if you feel the need or must or have to. Feel free to follow me on Twitter and Facebook, AspieAnswersAll. Feel free to private message me on my Facebook page, AspieAnswersAll, or straight on YouTube. Basically, feel free to do so. So, love what you do you love. And thanks for your support, and I'll see you all again soon.